if I'm an LSU fan, I'm sitting here saying to myself, 2025 is the year where we make the college football playoff. Why? Because it has got to be. Look at this roster. Look at who your quarterback is. Compare that with what your expectations were of Brian Kelly when he first got to Baton Rouge. This has got to be the year now where LSU makes a run at this thing. We'll unpack as to why right now. But if you're an LSU fan, well, first, thank you because you're probably subscribed to this channel. But if you're an LSU fan and you're not subscribed, welcome. Glad to have you here. It's college football, nothing but college football year-round. So make sure you're dialed in there. Let's start here. You think about LSU last year, and to me it felt a lot like a hurried trip to the airport. Like you oversleep, you look at the clock, I forgot to pack. Okay, let me throw everything possible into this suitcase to make sure that I have a chance to still make my flight. That was LSU last year. A lot of new things in the suitcase, right? New defensive staff. You lose Mike Denbrock to Notre Dame, so Joe Sloan becomes your offensive coordinator. You go to the portal and add some pieces, but it wasn't necessarily a tremendous level of quality. Oh, by the way, a new quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier, who was phenomenal, but there was so much about LSU last year that just felt unsettled. That's not the case this year. You got a full year under your belt. You have better overall quality of a roster, I believe, especially with what you got via the portal, having a top 5 class. More on that in a second. But let's just start with the quarterback play. If you have a guy at quarterback, you got a chance. LSU's got a dude now. I think arguably you have the best returning quarterback in the country, depending on how you feel about a Lenora Sellers and a DJ Lagway and guys of that caliber. At the very least, you have a quarterback that is the best returning passer in the SEC. And when we look at the jump that I think Garrett Nussmeier could take from last year to this year, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention previous LSU quarterbacks that made pretty meteoric jumps from their first year starting in Baton Rouge to their second year. Talk about Joe Burrow. Now, it's not a fair comp because of the jump he made from year 1 to year 2. Year 1, he threw for less than 3,000 yards. Now, the next year, he was throwing to a couple of first-round draft picks and went for over 5,000 yards. But you see my point. Very, very clearly, that second year, Joe Burrow had some light bulb moments and had success to go with it. Jaden Daniels, again, different staff. I totally get that. But we've seen the first year for him in Baton Rouge, same deal, threw for less than 3,000 yards. The next season, he goes absolutely berserk, also threw into a couple of first-round draft picks, but he wins the Heisman Trophy, as did Joe Burrow. So with Garrett Nussmeier, you don't have that same jumping-off point that you did for a Burrow and a Daniels. Now, I'm not telling you that Garrett Nussmeier is going to win the Heisman Trophy, but I will tell you he's the favorite right now in Vegas. And I will tell you you don't have to squint nearly as much to see Garrett Nussmeier have a season where he goes for over 4,000 yards yet again in 2025. Like, Garrett Nussmeier is good enough, I think, to get you into that college football playoff and to win you the SEC. Will he do it? Some of that, I think, depends on what else you have around him. Last year, check out this graphic by Stats by Cato, by the way. Beautiful graphic. He was second in America in terms of pass attempts. Only Kyle McCord is throwing the ball more than this guy. And in some respects, you say, yeah, you trust Garrett Nussmeier. He is, I think, the best offensive weapon that you have, so you make sure he can impact the game as much as possible. I totally get that. I also get that LSU is a operation that I think wants to be vertical in how they attack defenses offensively. I totally get that. However, when you throw the ball that much, some of that's a game plan thing. I think a lot of that is a survival thing. LSU was not equipped to run the football well last year. Caden Durham, as a true freshman, was their best running back. If your best running back is a true freshman, I get the injury bug bit him a little bit early on in the year. Still, you should have a little bit more in the running back room so you don't throw the ball 60% of the time. Garrett Nussmeier had like 40 attempts a game. That's not a winning recipe. So if Garrett Nussmeier can have less attempts and they can have more balance on offense, guess what? Defenses have to be more honest. If I know without a shadow of a doubt that all you can do against me is throw the football, as a defensive coordinator, I'm going to make your life suck. Plain and simple. And I think some of that has to do with why Garrett Nussmeier had as many interceptions as he did last year. So to finish out this thought around Garrett Nussmeier, he's good enough. Make that very clear. He's good enough. Across the SEC as well, there's a lot of new faces at the quarterback position. Like, if it's about quarterback play, you should have an advantage in just about every single game that you're playing. The 3 teams that are all favored to win the conference going to have a new quarterback. Texas, Georgia, Alabama, all new faces at quarterback. Not for LSU. So there's that part of it. And then you pair it with what you have around him on the roster, which I spoke to for a second. Some of it is definitely still TBD. But a year ago, with what LSU got out of the portal, it felt very much so like a, hey, we have to get something better than what we have on the roster right now, so let's go see what we can find. There's a lot more certainty, I believe, around this portal class for LSU. Like, there's some guys that you can look at their resume and there's proof of production. Like Patrick Payton at Florida State, when he was out there as an edge defender. Florida State wasn't awesome. Patrick Payton was awesome during his career at Florida State as a whole. Barian Brown, without any consistency at quarterback, one of the best offensive weapons at Kentucky at the receiver position, also can hurt you in the kick game. There's a lot more certainty around what you're getting out of that group, and that's why they are currently, as we tape this right now, the top 5 class in our On3 transfer portal team rankings. So roster should be improved. Quarterback, feel great about. Look at this schedule, man. There's a lot to like. There's a lot to like. Let's just go ahead and say that the recipe for getting into the college football playoff is 10-2. Now, you want to win the conference, 100%, but if you go 10-2, you're in the dance. LSU avoids all 3 of the teams that made the college football playoff from your conference last year in Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee. And you look at what their schedule, the way you could piece it together, if you will. If you just own home field, if you're LSU, and then split the games that are going to be good roster tests for you, you're in the college football playoff with a 10-2 record. Now, owning home field could be easier said than done because you got to play teams like Florida, South Carolina, and A&M, but I don't think LSU is outmatched by any of those rosters. I think LSU is just as good a shot to beat any of those teams. I really do. Now, the games that are going to be on the road, we'll see what happens there, but you got at Clemson, at Ole Miss, at Alabama, at Oklahoma, the ones that I'm circling in terms of best tests with our talent versus your talent. But again, you just split those two, and who knows what Ole Miss is going to be, who knows what Alabama is going to be with new quarterbacks. Oklahoma, I like Oklahoma. I like John Mateer. Got to have that work out for us in Norman. I mean, Clemson, I've been very high on Clemson, but first game of the year, maybe Brian Kelly gets his lick back from these last couple of opening games. There's a lot to like here. There's a lot to like here. So this is the year from the LSU fan that I've been talking about for a while. Within my group chats or within, the message boards over at the BengalTiger.com, our LSU on 3 site. This is now a Brian Kelly team. What I mean by that is we've talked so much the last few seasons whenever LSU's fallen short, we've kind of given them this excuse of, well, year 3, year 4, we won't see those things happen because it'll be a Brian Kelly culture and they'll be a little bit more solid across the board. You don't have that excuse in year 4. This is Brian Kelly's team. Now you are holding him to as high a standard as you had when you hired him. When you hired him, you expected him to be a team or a guy that would produce teams that made the college football playoff and competed and won national championships. Brian Kelly team, elite quarterback play potentially, capable staff, experienced staff now in Baton Rouge, good enough roster, workable path. It's all there. It's all there. On paper, everything is there for LSU to be a playoff team. And personally, I don't want to get too ahead of myself. We're going to do a way too early college football playoff prediction here on this show pretty soon, so another reason to subscribe. As of right now, feel good about where you stand if you're LSU. Make sure you're locked in here. Again, make sure you're subscribed. Cato on the 1s and 2s. For myself, JD PicKell, we love y'all. We will keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.